Good morning, class, receiving schools and teachers.
Good morning, Mrs. Watangas.
How are you all this morning?
We are very well, thank you, and how are you?
I'm very well, just like you. Thank you. You may be seated. Now we are with our lesson, Making a Living, grade 7. Resources, we are still using Home Economics, PNG, Book 1, Making a Living, Teacher's Guide, and Syllabus for grade 7s. Now, when you have a look at the screen, you see our topic says, what does it say? Blanket stitch. Blanket stitch is one of the common stitches that we have looked at and that we will be using in sewing our pillowcase. Now, we have already used two of the basic stitches, which are the back stitch and the slip hemming to sew the opening to the pillowcase and the sides of the pillowcase. Now, these three stitches, the blanket stitch, the back stitch, and the slip hemming, are known as basic stitches. Basic stitches that are used to sew garments. Now, I'd like someone to tell me what stitches are. What are stitches? Someone who can tell us what stitches are called. What are stitches?
Ways or patterns of sewing.
Come on again.
Ways or patterns of sewing.
Ways of,
Ways or patterns of sewing.
okay, ways or patterns to sew. Now, anybody else who would like to add on what Paul has told us on what stitches are? Trisha?
Single pass of thread and needle through the fabric.
Okay, single pass of a thread and needle through the fabric. Thank you. Single pass of a thread and needle through the fabric. Now, we've also learned in a previous lesson when we were doing samples on the blanket stitch that blanket stitches are used to do something to the garment or to whatever that we want to sew. Can someone tell me what blanket stitch is used for? What is blanket stitch used for? What is blanket stitch used for? Anybody who would like to try? Yes, Paul S. What is blanket stitch used for? Paul S.
Blanket stitch is used for sewing thick garments, thick fabric like blanket.
Good. Blanket stitch is used for sewing or knitting the edge of a thick fabric. Blanket stitch is used for knitting edge of a thick fabric. Thick fabric example, Messi. Thick fabric example.
Jeans.
Any other examples of thick fabric? Hayano? Any other examples of thick fabric?
A blanket.
Blankets. Okay, thank you. Now, in sewing blanket stitches, There are also steps that we've looked at in the previous lesson, and I'd like us to have a look at them again, just to help us to know how we should do blanket stitching on our pillowcases. Now I'm going to put the blanket stitches, the steps up, and I will have few students to come and help to rearrange them in the correct order. Let's see. I'll have Francis first for the first step, Raymond, second step, Ovin, third. Can I have you first and then I'll have the others? Francis, I'd like you to check to see which one should be the first step to blanket stitching. Thank you. Who is the next? Raymond. Then Ovin, you after Raymond. Ovin. Elizabeth next. We have the first, second, third all in order. Elisa, you finish it off for us. Yeah, once you move the last, then it's all in order. So, these are the steps that we've looked at, and we will use these steps once again to blanket stitch the edges of the pillowcase that we are working on. Let's go quickly through the steps together. I'd like all of us to read the first one together.
Begin with a double stitch from the left edge of the fabric.
Second step.
Lay the thread to the left. Insert the needle into the fabric to the right.
Thank you. First, second, and third group, the third step.
Bring the point of the needle up just below the edge of the fabric.
Fourth and fifth group.
Move the needle through between the thread to the left and the right.
Okay, that's when the first stitch is made. Sixth and seventh. Group 5, the last.
Finishing with a double stitch.
So as usual, we always begin with a double stitch and end with, again, double stitch. Now in blanket stitching, where do we normally start sewing? Where? Bobby, in blanket stitching, where do we normally start?
From the left
From the
side.
From the left edge or left end of whatever garment you are making. With the other stitches, we usually start from the right, but with blanket stitching, it has to start from the left. Okay. Now let's have a look at our activity. What does our activity tell us to do? I'd like the class to read it together. Okay, we are now going to blanket stitch the side row edges of our pillowcases. We've already slip hemmed the opening to the pillowcase. We've back stitched the two sides of the pillowcase, and now we will be blanket stitching. Now if we can all read once again the instructions to follow. I'd like the class to read it together. Again?
Pillowcase remains inside out.
Which means your pillowcase must be inside out. If you have already turned your pillowcase the right way, I'd like you to turn it inside out. Now, what does the first step tell us to do in blanket stitching?
Begin with the double stitch from the left folded edge.
Okay, begin with a double stitch from the left folded edge. Now, that's your pillowcase. That's Brandon's. And here it says, begin with a double stitch from the left folded edge. That is the folded edge, okay? This is where the flap is. Now here it's talking about you beginning from the folded edge. So that is where you start doing your blanket stitch and you end where the folded flap is. Thank you, Brendan, nice. Now let's see. Left, is it? The left. So that's your left. So you start from here, from the left down that way. Okay? Not to turn this one over yet. Now, look this way, please, class. Brandon has already turned this flap over. Now, if your flap is the right way, I'd like you to turn it back, okay? You have to turn the flap back. So it is all inside out. Okay, so it is the left, that's the left side of the pillow. Is it the left or the right? Which side are you to sew? No. Which side of a pillowcase are you to sew? The left side of the pillowcase. So you turn it, you see, this way, and you start sewing from here along the row edge all the way to there. Double stitch. Let's see yours. Okay, good. Okay, you see 1, 2. Now we do the, oh goodness, made a mistake and this is out. Now when you put it through, you go in, push the needle, bring the needle up just below the fabric and pull it through. Continue. Let's see yours. Go over there, go and sit down so you can get, you see you're standing, you're already spoiling it. Take it and go and I'll come. You okay? You have to complete your back stitching first. Okay, you are starting here. Where's your left? Okay, that's your left. That's your left pillowcase. So when you are going to back stitch, when you are going to do your blanket stitching, you turn it this way. And then you sew from here all the way down. Turn it, that's the left, you cannot see, so you turn it this way. Then you blanket stitch from there. You threaded yours already. Who's already threaded your needle? Okay. How many? That's too thick. What you do, you can use 2 or 3. Okay. Okay, let's see. You can use 2 if you think 3 is too thick. If you think 3 is too thick, you can use 2. Okay, so Patricia is going to use 2. Pull it out nicely so you don't have it tangled up. Okay, thread that one in your watch. Harold, you already threaded this. Let's see. Okay, you have to get the scissors and neaten the edges of your water so it's straight before we start sewing. You already threaded yours. Okay. You threaded yours already? Okay, see, no, you are trying to start from the right. What does it say? Blanket stitch, you start from the left. Now, this is your left pillowcase. Now you have to complete your back stitch into Langa before you do the blanket stitch. So now you are going to do your back stitch. Okay. You've already completed yours. Okay, that's too thick. You cannot use all of it. You have to use oh, there's 3 inside. Okay, let's see. You tied a knot or no? Yeah. William, this is not your arm's length. It looks too long. And when it's too long, what happens? Tangled. It gets tangled when it's too long. So we are going to cut that one off. Okay, you get scissors and cut that one. Where that knot is, bring the scissors and we cut that one off first. No, down. Yeah, there. Okay, put this one away, you use it later. Now this one might be problem while we are sewing, so let's get rid of the first. Okay, see? Now, you're sitting this way, so that's your left. When you want to do the blanket stitch, you turn it, because you have to start from the left. Okay, see, you missed that one out, but later you have to sew that one on. So what you do, okay, you start here. Now let's straighten that edge first. It says begin with a double stitch, so from the left, okay, then you go back, come up, pull it out, go back again, pull it out, okay, do that. So now our double stitching should be over. To double stitch is just like you making double stitch with the slip hemming and the back stitch. That is the same way you do your double stitching for blanket stitch as well. And we'll look at the second step. Can I have groups 4, 5, and 6 to read for us the second step? Okay, you are to blanket stitch, and if you have forgotten your blanket stitching, I've got the steps done here. Your friends have helped to rearrange, so you can look at the steps again to help you to do your blanket stitching of the raw edges. you have to cut this one so it's not too wide out. See, it's not even. You see, you have to cut it out to make it even. Let's see, so we can, What? You have? Is this your left? No, that's the right. Your left is over here. Now, to do your blanket stitch on the left, if you try to do it this way, it's going to be a problem. So what you do, you turn the pillowcase around. So the raw edge is facing you, and you begin here on the left, that's the right, on the left with double stitch, okay? You push the needle through, bring it out, go back, pull it through, go back again the second time, pull it through. Then you push the needle, okay, about 1 centimeter or half a centimeter. Okay, let me, I'll just show you please what to do. If I can have you all. Now, that's Helen's left, okay? That's the left, so she can't, you see, you can't do this and blanket stitch. So she has to turn the fabric, so it faces her. Then you do double stitch, okay? Now you don't have to go right down to where the back stitching is. Okay? Just along that line all the way to the end. So double stitch, okay? Pull it through, go back, pull it through again, and not so tight, go back, and the double stitch is made now. Now the second step, it says we have to blanket stitch along the raw edges to the folded flap. So when looking at our actual steps to blanket stitching, we push the needle to the right, okay, half a centimeter down, bring the needle up, pull the needle through between the thread to the left and the right, okay, and then you continue like that. Push the needle down, bring the needle up, between the thread to the left, right, pull it through, okay? And you go like that all the way. Now, once you see that your needle thread is becoming short, you have to do double stitch again. One, it's already there, so you go in, and then bring it out, finish. Then get another of your piece of thread, and start again with double stitch and continue. Okay. Let's see you do that. The next blanket stitch. Okay, pull it through. There, okay? And don't pull it too tight. All the way down. Yeah? Both of you misplaced your thread, embroidery thread. Were you given, who got the embroidery thread for your glue? Nana Dai. Any piece left? No. Okay, let's see. I should have some. That's okay, just hold it and I'll cut. There's no time to. Okay, if you're certain, you can, because I'm giving you this to use. You okay? Okay, you have to sew on the left side of your pillowcase. So now look at this. I'd like you to look this way. This is Trisha's left side of the pillowcase. Now, she cannot put it this way and sew, because that's not the way you have been taught. So you have to turn your pillowcase around. So the raw edge is facing you. You start from the left, okay, and sew to the right. Okay, so what you do, you turn it. You should do your double stitching here. Once it becomes short, you have one stitch already, so just go over it again and double it up. Get another thread and start again. Double stitch and then go. Now, what do you think is going to be the next step? Next step, which is going to be the last step, to blanket stitching the raw edges. Justin, what do you think is going to be the last step to the blanket stitching of the raw edges? Now we are blanket stitching from the fold to the folded flap. What do you think is going to be the next step? Next, which is going to be the last step too?
Blanket stitch the left side.
Before you go to the other side, we are now blanket stitching the raw edge. So to finish off the blanket stitching of this raw edge, how do we finish? How do we finish?
Double stitch it.
Very good. We finish with a double stitch. And that is our next step, which is to finish with a double stitch. Now, a reminder, once you find that your stitch is becoming shorter, you have to double stitch, get another piece of thread again, begin again with a double stitch, and continue blanket stitching until you get to the end of the pillowcase. Now, if I can have someone to guess for us what you think our next lesson is going to be. Not the key phrase, our next lesson. What do you think our next lesson is going to be, Teresa? Next lesson.
Blanket stitch.
Okay, Teresa says our next lesson is going to be still on blanket stitching. Let's check to see if she is correct. Okay, that's the last. So, our friend is correct. Our next lesson is still on blanket stitching. How about the key phrase? What about the key phrase? Patrick, our key phrase for our lesson.
Blanket stitch.
Okay, Patrick says our key phrase is blanket stitching. Thank you. Our key phrase, Patrick is correct, is blanket stitching. Okay, class, with that, good morning to you, good morning to the receiving schools and teachers.
Mrs. Watangas.